or refuel.
That because the touching belongs to the Mizbeach and the Truma belongs to the Kohen.
Even kachim that became yours, let's say, what I would understand, let's say if you're the parts of the animal that belong to the Baalim, that the owner is supposed to, like a shlamim, I would think the law applies there as well. You have to, if it became contaminated, you have to burn it. The owner cannot benefit. So the Gemara was looking for the source of that. So we're up to the middle of Ibayit Ema on 25a, A1 on the right side. We said that after 3 years, there's by Erev Pesach, it comes to the Pesach time. They come to the Beit HaMikdash, and a person goes ahead and he makes good morning, Ralph. He makes a vidui. He goes ahead. Good to see you, Ralph. We said he has to go ahead and he has 3 years, a cycle of 3 years and 3 years of Maaserot. As we said, the first 3 years of Maaser, there's a cycle, but you have to give the first year, the second year, third year, and that's repeated fourth, the fifth, and sixth. And after the third year, you have to make sure your deadline of all the Maaserot have to be removed and separated by Erev Pesach of the following year, of the fourth year. And then once you do that, you have to you come, and on the last day of Pesach, seventh day of Pesach, you make a declaration. There's a mitzvah to make a vidui, a declaration in the Beis HaMikdash that I've done everything that I was told to do. And the Rambam says if you made the vidui anywhere not in the Beit HaMikdash, you technically will fulfill the mitzvah. But but you yotzei, but you didn't do it. Seems like the ideal way that you're supposed to do it by the Beit HaMikdash. And in that declaration, he says, Ibayit Ema, around 25a1 on the right, I didn't consume and benefit from it. That's how we're going to translate. I didn't, when the Maaser Sheni, Maaser Sheni is one of those types that he has to give, and he makes a statement, I did not consume it when it was Tameh. I did not consume it in a way of benefiting from it when it was Tameh. Now, we saw Tameh means whether I was Tameh and the item was pure, or the item was Tameh and I was pure. Either case, I didn't use it, but I did not. So the pasuk says the word mimenu. I did not benefit from it. I didn't burn it. I didn't consume it. I didn't use it when it was tameh. I didn't use it in any fashion. I didn't benefit from it. So mimenu, from it, specifically this maaser sheni that became contaminated, I could not benefit from and use it. But mimenu yetamavir. So the Gemara is darshaning, is expounding on the word mimenu of atamav mishum shatum shenitmei. But I could go ahead and benefit, consume and benefit and burn, not consume to eat because I can't eat truma that became contaminated, but I could go ahead and benefit from it. Use it when I'm burning it. I can use it for heat. I can use it for light, because that's what the menu. Now the menu did not tell us. Okay, this one by Maaser Sheni you can't benefit, you can't use, but something else, but truma you can. It just indicated there is something else that you could. The Gemara is saying, what is, name that tune, name that item that you could benefit from when you consume it in its state of contamination. The Gemara says that is truma that became contaminated. So the Gemara now shoots back. How do you know that menu is coming to exclude, it's coming to tell us, but the other item, the item that you could include, meaning the pasuk is excluding. The pasuk is coming to say this you can't benefit from, which will come to include something else. It's something else you can benefit. How do you know what's referring to truma? Maybe the Gemara says the ema, maybe mimenu yetamav matmav v'shem shel kodesh nitma. Maybe you have oil that was kodesh, that was going to be used for a korban, and then it became was designated for korban, consecrated for the korban, then it became contaminated, which you have to burn. Contaminated kosher you have to burn. Well, maybe that you have a right to use and benefit from when you burn it. How do you know the item that you're coming to say that's excluded from this pasuk and not included in this pasuk, not included in the stringency? The pasuk is telling us a stringency that you can't benefit from the Ma'aseh Sheni, but something else you could benefit from. How do you know that what's excluded from the stringency is truma? Maybe what's excluded, what we're excluding, and we're saying you can't use is kochim, kodesh. So the Gemara says, listen, lav kavachomu, meaning we have a kavachomer. Good morning, Simon. We've seen we have a kavachomer to tell us that it can't be that the kodesh you should be able to benefit from, and Ma'aseh Sheni you can't benefit from, right? What's the given? We have one given on the table. Torah says, Simon, Ma'aseh Sheni you can't benefit from when it became contaminated. You can't benefit when you're burning it. That's the given. Now, there's something else that we know you could benefit from, because the way the Torah writes it, it's very specific. It's very specific about Ma'aseh Sheni, which indicates something else you could go ahead and benefit from. What is that item? So the Gemara says it can't be kodesh, kochim, because if you can't benefit from Ma'aseh Sheni, certainly you can't benefit from kodesh. What's stronger? What's stricter in general? Kochim, something which is holy, which has all these restrictions, kochim, or meaning, for instance, let's understand, Ma'aseh Sheni, is eaten by the owners, right? Ma'aseh Sheni, nothing goes on the altar, right? It doesn't compare to kochim, something that's more consecrated, which is connected to the kodesh, the Beit HaMikdash, or it's a much stricter, and therefore, if Ma'aseh Sheni you can't benefit from when it is the state of contamination, and when you burn it, you can't benefit from it. Certainly, you can't benefit from kochim. So therefore, if there's anything that you would be able to benefit from that we're coming to say you could benefit from, will be truma. That's what the Gemara says. Ma ma'aseh, ma'aseh, which is more lenient. Amra Torah, the Torah says, "Lo ba'arti mimeno b'tamei." You're not allowed to benefit from it when you're burning it in the state of when it's contaminated. Kodesh chamur, kodesh, which is much stricter. Lo kosher, certainly you will not be able to benefit from when you're burning it when it's contaminated. So the Gemara says, Yihachi, if that's the case, truma nami le'mekava chomer. Truma, what's more strict? If you put on the table, you have it on the scale. You have Ma'aseh Sheni, which is eaten even by non-Kohanim, and you have Truma, which is eaten only by Kohanim. What's stricter? Truma is stricter. So we should also say the same thing. If Ma'aseh Sheni, you can't benefit from the burning of the Ma'aseh Sheni when it's contaminated. Certainly, you should not be able to benefit from Truma if that has to be burnt that became contaminated. Is that clear? Nathan, you got it, right? So the Gemara says, listen, 20 miles. But we have a pasuk that says mimenu. The pasuk is clearly telling us that this item, this Ma'aseh Sheni you can't benefit from when you burn it, but there is something else that you could benefit from. So we have to give you truma. We have to allow you to benefit from the truma when you burn it, because the Torah is giving us, this is the chidush. This is what, you're right. On paper, truma also you shouldn't benefit from when you burn it if it's contaminated. But the Torah is telling us this is the exception to what you would have said. So that's why we need we'll call it a gzeirat hakatuf, a special law of the Torah, to tell you that otherwise over here, the Torah is being lenient, giving the Kohen extra benefits from this. So the Gemara says, okay, right. You have a fact. You know that Ma'aseh Sheni you can't benefit from. When it's contaminated, you can't benefit from. And you know there's something else that you could benefit from. So Torah used that word mimenu. From it you can't benefit from, something else you could. How do you know to pick? If you're going to tell me there's something you could benefit from, how do you know you're going to pick? It's truma that you could benefit from when you burn, the truma that became contaminated. Maybe pick, if once it's a chidush, maybe pick kachim. Maybe it's kachim. How do you know if you're picking one over the other? How do you know to pick truma over kachim? Maybe kachim is the thing that Torah is coming to tell you that you can benefit from when it's in a state of contamination. Nathan, I'm waiting for Nathan to say a response. Okay, so you hear what Nathan said? Nathan is saying, listen, okay, Rabbi, it's true. There's something here that Miles, we are on 25A, 2. We turned the page, 25A, 2. Top right column. If we're talking about, to bring Miles up to date, we're talking about if you have there's something called Ma'aser Sheni, certain tithes that you have to bring to Jerusalem and to eat there. Torah says, and you make a statement, you're not allowed to go ahead and benefit if it became contaminated. If the Ma'aser Sheni became contaminated, you have to go ahead and you can't eat it if it became contaminated. You have to go ahead and burn it. And the Torah says you can't burn it and benefit from it when you're burning it.
But you could use it for life.
Oh, truma, we said you could for life, but not Ma'aser Sheni. And the Gemara says, how do you know that you could use truma? Maybe you can't use truma either. So the Gemara says, truma that became contaminated that you burn, you're allowed to benefit from. So the Gemara says, because there's an extra word by Ma'aser Sheni, which tells us that this prohibition, you can't benefit from the Ma'aser Sheni when you burn it, when it became contaminated, applies to that, but there's something else you could benefit from. And the Gemara says, what is that other thing that you could benefit from? It's going to be truma. You could benefit. Ma'aser Sheni you can't, but truma you can. So the Gemara said, maybe it's other thing you can benefit from is not truma, maybe something else like kachim. Kachim is like sacrifice, parts of the sacrifice that became contaminated. So the Gemara says, Nathan's point. If I have to say there's something you could benefit from, which is a leniency, which item would you say you could benefit from? More likely the thing that's not as strict. The weaker item would be less sacred, right, Simon? The item is less sacred, less holy. That's the one you should have more right to benefit from, and something that's more holy. So if you have face off in the ring, standing in, kachim on the ring on one side, and they're standing at a 6'10", and the other side weighing 300 pounds. The other side you have truma, which is 6'5", weighing 250. So the 6'10", 300 pounds is going to knock out the 6'5". So that's what therefore it's more likely that you should be able to use it. Exactly. Beautiful. You got it.
Uses the word it's. Do any of the commentators ask maybe both of the other two are allowed? You're excluding one thing. It doesn't say from them, which you might have had a debate of, is it two things you're excluding or three things you're excluding? But when you say it, does it allow for two?
Right. So it seems like there's an allowance of one. We only aim more like maybe the chidush is this you can't benefit from when you burn the Ma'aser Sheni, but they didn't understand me, but everything else you could. But there's something else. This you can't, but something else you can. But it didn't include everything else you can. They didn't see it. So the Gemara says what Nathan said. Nathan, I knew you would say that. That what did the Gemara say, Simon? That if you have to pick which one there's going to be an allowance to benefit from, more likely be the item that's not as holy, which is the truma. And that's what the Gemara is going to say. Because kachim, the Gemara is going to say, why? Mistavra kodesh lo matina. The logic, Ralph, you with me? We are now on
25A2.
Right. Mistavra, it's logical Kodesh. We're not excluding Kodesh. We're not excluding the sacred parts of the animal. Shekain Siman, there's what do you call it, a mnemonic. Siman, it has, with an acronym, it has Panak Achas. What's Panak Achas? Each letter represents, it's an acronym, each letter represents a word. Pei, Panak, the Pei represents Pigul, the Nun represents Notar, Kuf is Korban, Ayin is, that's what the word's going to say, Ayin, Notar, Pigul, Notar, Korban, Mi'ilah, Karet, and Asur La'oneh. And what are all these? These are six. The Gemara lists six stringencies that we have regarding holy items, parts of sacrifice that became contaminated. I'm sorry, six things that are strict regarding kodshim, holy items in general. You have six, and the Gemara is going to shoot back. What do you mean? Truma has a certain amount, and we're going to say it's 6-4. Who's 6-4? Who's the winner? The 6 is the winner. That makes it more strict. Yes.
So why do they use mnemonics? I've never seen a mnemonic.
Sometimes to make it easy, sometimes to make it easy. Yeah, you'll find that you'll see some Gemaras have more mnemonics than others.
Oh,
fine. Okay. Have it like the Kiddush on Yom Tov and second night and all that stuff.
Right, Yat Nahas. When Yom Tov comes out after Shabbat, and Shabbat runs into Yom Tov, so we have very unique Havdalah. We have very unique Kiddush.
Like this Shabbos.
I said this also, right, this is interesting. Right, so there's no Regal Havdalah. This Motzei Shabbat, there's no Regal Havdalah. The only thing you do is Borei Moreish, this Motzei Shabbat, right, Simon? Only Borei Moreish Saturday night, and then you make Havdalah Sunday night, Miles. Havdalah will be moved to Sunday night, and we miss out Samim this year. This year we miss out Samim, but Sunday night it's going to be just the Borei Geffen and the Baruch Atah Hashem V'Kol Mavdo Kol Shechol Ben Chosh. There's no light, there's no Samim. Just the abridged version of the.
Do the light Saturday night, do the wine Sunday night, and no Sunday.
No, right, exactly. And so we have. So what do these things stand for? So Rashi goes and he says, Pigul. For a person, when he slaughtered the animal, if he had in mind to eat the korban outside, it's no time that it's allowed to be eaten. Like certain animal, every korban. Every sacrifice has a certain amount of window of time you're supposed to eat the animal. Time and price. Rashi gives the example the time, right? But that's correct. And so that's the Rashi gives that case. Now notar, right? If something's left over, that means you actually, you were not allowed to eat it. Not that you just had a mind, meaning. The prohibition of having a mind is, Rashi says that even if you ate it within the time that you're allowed to eat it, but if you had a mind to eat it outside the time, I mean the power of machshava, the power of just having the wrong thought invalidates the offering of blood and carries and pigul, it ruins the offering. Notar actually was left over to the morning when Torah says don't leave it over to the morning, and you ate it. That's notar. And then there's something called mi'ilah. Mi'ilah is certain, if you benefit from the korban, from the kodshim, from the sacrifice, when you have someone else had no right to use it, that will be mi'ilah. There's certain korban, you have to bring a special offering, and then there's also karet. So if someone goes ahead and he eats it, if someone is in a state of contamination, there's karet. There's karet for a person to eat it, and also there is also it's onay that if a person is in the status of aninut, if a person lost his close relative, one of the 7 close relatives, that he's not allowed to go ahead and eat the kodshim in the status when he is before the burial. So the Gemara says, so we have 6 stringencies regarding kodshim. So the Gemara says, Adarabba, Shuma lo matina. Let's not, you brought up 6 things there, but we have we have a number of stringencies regarding truma, and I presume the Gemara is asking. Look what the Gemara says. Shekain machpas. We got another mnemonic. Mem, Simon. Mem chet pei zayin. Right, Ralph. What is that sim for? Mita. This death from heaven. If a person goes ahead and eats truma, if a person who's not a kohen eats truma, or a kohen that's tamei eats truma, so there's death. So kohen is really, it sounds like kohen is more, they die before 60, so but a guy could be living another 40, 30 years. But death from heaven sounds like it's short, it's faster. It's not as, and courage, Rambam says courage has the aspect of spiritual, right? Cutting off losing the next world, right? And that's like nida. A person sleeps with a nida. That's courage. Obviously, if a person, a lady who has a period, she didn't go to the mikvah, and that's where you have to, by the way, all these things is, if a guy did there's tshuva, a person can repent. They will not get karet if the person did that sin. That carries a karet penalty. If they do tshuva, they repent. They don't get they got the next world. So he says now the Gemara, even though it's 6-4, but the Gemara is suggesting that maybe the fact that there is 4 stringencies here, maybe you'll look at these stringencies, maybe sometimes there's something called quantity and quality. So you could have a more quantity of stringencies, but maybe the quality of some stringencies could make, if it's less in number, maybe the Gemara is thinking maybe it will be the winner, perhaps. Mita, there's death. Chomesh, there is a chomesh. If let's say the person non-kohen eats the truma, he has to not only has to give back, pay the kohen the value of the truma, he has to also add a 5th. So, right?
Why is it
Because from one equal to the other 4.
so you're at, I see. So it'd be like 125%. So it's one of the total final. Okay. That's an interesting one.
But kachim, but holy foods, once the kohen had a right to eat it, so and then if the non-kohen ate the kachim, he does not have to pay
Does it
a
matter
5th.
if he eats it intentionally or unintentionally?
Here we're talking about unintentionally. We have to see if he eats it unintentionally, then he has this payment, and he has if a non-kohen eats truma unintentionally, not knowing that it's truma, you have to pay the value of the truma plus another 5th. Now we're turning the page. Ve'ein lo pidyon, and truma. If truma becomes contaminated, there's no way to redeem it. You can't say, this contaminated truma, I'm going to redeem. It has, let's say, it has a value of $100. I'm going to redeem it onto non-contaminated truma, and therefore, then the kohen will be able to eat, or now it should the truma that was once contaminated now should be able to become chulin, become non-truma. We don't say that. If truma became contaminated, it still remains. You cannot remove that state of truma contamination through redemption. There's no redemption. However, when it comes to kachim, parts of sacrifice parts that became contaminated, you have the ability to go ahead and redeem it onto onto something else, and that item becomes holy, and this becomes chulin.
In one respect, coaching is more relaxed.
More relaxed, right? So Rashi gives, what's the case? Rashi says, let's say you had an animal, and Rashi says the case that you could redeem kachim is, let's say you have an animal, you consecrate it. I said, I'm bringing this animal as a korban. And before you slaughter the offering, Rashi says, that's the case Rashi says, before you slaughter the animal, it got a blemish. It got a blemish. So not the case that Rashi didn't say the case that it became tamei. We have to see what's the law, but it became tamei. Rashi says the case that it got a mum. It got a blemish. You're able to redeem it. You're able to redeem it at that point. Let's see.
But the case in the Gemara is that it was not redeemed.
Right. The Gemara saying, right. We're talking about truma. The Gemara said truma can never be redeemed.
Oh,
Right, and the kachim, right, and we're talking about things that were not redeemed. Correct. And now, so the question is, how do you know? So we see these stringencies, and like Nathan pointed out, this is a unique stringency that truma has over kachim. So with these stringencies overpower those six, we have four stringencies by truma, and v'asura l'zarim. And you know what? Truma, I can never eat truma. But you know, I can eat kachim. Certain I can eat. Certain things only Kohanim. A korban chatat, a sin offering, only the Kohanim. Anything that's holy, kachim, there's a right to be eaten, like an asham. There's certain parts of the holy could be eaten, or the chatat. That's eaten specifically by the Kohen. But when if it's kachim kalim, they're called light kachim. A korban pesach is light kachim. A korban toda is light kachim. Right? The shlamim, a piece of light kachim. I, the owner, I get a part of the deal. I eat some of that. Right? So kachim has that leniency that it's not limited, it's only to Kohanim. Right? So the Gemara says, so truma. So that's what the Gemara says. So I would suggest the Gemara says, okay, yes, you showed strength in truma, but hanech nefishin, but it's still 6-4, and therefore the Gemara says we go with the kachim over the what, over the truma. The kachim is more strict, and therefore since it's more strict, for more stringency, therefore if we're going to allow something to benefit from in the consumption when it's contaminated, we'll allow the lighter one, which is truma. But you heard the chidush that we said. What was the Gemara thinking in the question? The Gemara knew this is 6 and this is 4, right? He was suggesting maybe the quality of those stringencies the Gemara was thinking, perhaps. And maybe that's perhaps and that's the next answer. The Gemara suggests another answer. The Gemara is not satisfied totally with this first answer to say 6-4 is the deal. Because sometimes, a guy wants to buy a building, right? We have 2 buildings to buy. I can tell you there's 4 reasons why to buy this building. There's 6 reasons to buy the other building. But the 4 reasons to buy this building are such more what's a nice word?
Appetizing.
It makes the case much greater than the 6 reasons to buy the other building. There's 6 benefits here. There's 4 benefits here, but these 4 benefits are much greater than those 6. So that's why that's maybe perhaps they're not satisfied to say that this is more than the other one. It doesn't necessarily mean it's stronger. The fact that you have more situations, but maybe the other thing is still stronger. Compelling. Doesn't make it a more compelling case. That's the word I'm looking for. Kodesh chamor. You know why Kodesh is more chamor? Shekain karet. So now the Gemara is looking at one item. This one item is the winner. This is the winner. Just like you have the concept Shabbat. Shabbat is stricter than Yom Kippur. Shabbat, why? Because it has skila. The punishment of Shabbat is higher than any other, meaning it's higher than Yom Kippur. That makes it a more stricter violation. A heavier violation is, on the car we get 4 points, 6 points. It's a higher violation. No one should ever get those tickets because it's in the punishment. That's what the Gemara is saying. Mita b'dei shemayim, yes. Truma has death from heaven, but death from heaven doesn't equal karet. Now, why not? So, karet, Rashi says, one of Rashi says it. So, karet is also the idea of dying without children. The children will pass away. That let's see if they translate it over here. Yeah, he dies before 60, and also the children. So that is a stricter punishment than
Well, Nathan said that you're cut off from Shemar, right?
it's cut off from the next world, and also right. Rashi emphasizes the point that his days are cut. See, Rashi doesn't say he loses the next world. At least Rashi over here doesn't say that. Rashi here says his days are cut and he goes ariri. He goes childless. They let's see if there's another Rashi somewhere else. But that is yeah, by Koreit. Let's see if they say anything more. But that's why that makes it more strict. Now, so the Tosfos holds Kares, he dies before 60. The punishment, see, but Mita B'dei Shemayim sounds like, see, we said before maybe because it could have, on the one hand, it could happen anytime, it can happen right away, but also it could also happen after 62. The Yerushalmi says Karedi dies before 50. It's not a commonly quoted, it's not commonly quoted, known, that Yerushalmi.
They only expect to live 100 years. They said you were shown.
Shalmi says 50. 50 years. But here it's interesting why they don't mention Karet being cut off from the next world. You know, we said that's the Rambam. The Rambam says Karet is cut off from the next world. We have to see more over here. So the Gemara Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says he has a pasuk. He has a pasuk that teaches us that you could go ahead and benefit, that a Kohen has a right to benefit from Truma that became contaminated. And therefore, you can't say it's coming to exclude Truma. The pasuk says, when it comes to Truma, this is when the Torah is enumerating, talking about the gifts that you give to the Kohen. It says, you give the first of your, you give from your wheat, from your grain, from your oil, from your wine, from your oil, and it says, you're giving it to him, and you give it to him, and you have to give him something he's able to eat, but you're not supposed to give him something, meaning Rashi says, what's the case? Rashi says, if something is tahar, something is pure, you can only take truma from something that's pure for something that's pure. Meaning, if I have crops that are not contaminated, I can't lower. But I also think I can't. I mean, I might not be able to do it the other way either. Might go a two-way street, but I can't go ahead and take ain't tromim tamei on top. This crop is non-contaminated. This crop is contaminated. I can't take. Well, let's say I have 100 bushels of wheat, and I have, 98 bushels are a tahar. The 2 bushels are contaminated. I can't separate the 2 contaminated bushels from the 98 non-contaminated bushels. I have to go ahead and take from non-contaminated bushels for the to separate that for the non-contaminated bushels, and the contaminated bushels for the contaminated bushels. So, and because how do we know that? Because the pasuk says, "Titain lo." Give him truma. When you're taking oil from this pure truma, give him truma that he could titin lo, that he could eat. Don't give him truma that he can't eat, that he can only burn and use as firewood. That you shouldn't give him. So what's the implication? The implication is there is truma that he could use for firewood, he could benefit from. But I don't want you to give him that truma. I want to exempt, to cover food that's not contaminated. And the implication is there is truma that could be used for firewood, and that's so. Therefore, we see you could benefit from. Now, what truma could be used for firewood? Tamei truma. So that's what the Gemara says. Don't give him truma from fruits that are contaminated on fruits that are pure, because you can't take truma that's contaminated. That's for that. So, and you have to give the Kohen truma that he could eat from in that situation. So the fact that it says Michlal de bat orohu, it implies that truma which would have been contaminated, you have to give him something titin low what he could eat, not that what he could only use for fuel. That means there is something that he could use for fuel. So it's a proof that truma that's contaminated could be used for fuel. So therefore, if the Torah says, my kasheni I can't use for fuel when it is contaminated, but something else I could, obviously the could is going on truma, not because you can't say truma is excluded. You can't use truma. You'll make a kavahoma that you can't use truma, because we see from this drasha you can use truma that was contaminated for personal use. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. Let's have a beautiful davening. Miles, it's very good how you picked up so fast the Gemara. You came in the middle and you picked up 1, 2, 3. Good. Have a great day, Simon. Ralph, have a great day.
You too, Rabbi.